Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kat and today I'm doing my March wrap-up part 1. At the very beginning, and this was super foolish of me, I decided to start Pain and Prejudice, which is about women's bodies. It's Not About the Burqa, which is about Islam and women who may or may not choose to wear a headscarf. And Romantic Outlaws, which is about Mary Wollstonecraft and Mary Shelley. So, I started out the month and I was like, I'm gonna bang these out. And guess what? It was so slow and such a trudge. So what you're seeing is when I start this wrap up, it's gonna be a lot of like easier fantasy or romance reads in the beginning because I was reading these at the same time. So don't be fooled thinking I was just reading like these quick little books. I was also reading these mammoths in the background. So, okay, I'm gonna go in order that I read things. The first one that I read is called No Perfect Secret by Lorenzo. This is a romance set in Las Vegas, and the reason it came to my attention is because it has my mental health disorder trick in it. So I wanted to read it and see if it's good rep, and while I think that the portrayal of the disorder is pretty accurate, I think that the way that the love interest reacted was so poor. No, I didn't like this book, so I gave it 2.5 stars. And not only because of how my disorder was portrayed and the reactions like that the author gave the side characters, but because the plot itself was just a hot mess. This was not for me. This was not it, fam, and don't recommend. So the next one that I read is also a romance, and it is called The Sounds of Secrets by Whitney Barbetti. This one I do recommend. It was so good. So we are following a main character who is dealing with death in the family, and she's going through a lot of like traumatic grief, and she decides that she's going to take a year and backpack through America because she is from London. And during this time, there's also like this guy that she's been in love with for a long time. He happens to be her brother-in-law's best friend, and he doesn't seem interested in her, and he's kind of always been on a pedestal. And the thing about this slow burn is that both of them are struggling with certain things that the author does so well and explores so well. So the main female character is struggling with my disorder trick, and it was such good rep. It was like 10 out of 10 rep, and also the way that the love interest dealt with it was so caring and so loving, and like I will absolutely be recommending this to anyone with trichotillomania who wants like a romance that shows it in a healthy way where people are being like supportive and stuff. Like, it was so good. And it was so good as a romance, like without having the disorder even. So I really do recommend this. I gave it 4 stars. And if you're looking for a romance which has like, it's slow burn, it's misunderstanding, and it's like when each of the characters thinks that they're not good enough for the other one, and you're just like, please just kiss already. Like, that is what this romance gave me. And yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. Okay, so next up is Daring the Devil by Natasha, Larry, and Lindsey Loucks. This is a fantasy that I read for FanTale Readathon. So we are following a female main character who is the princess of hell. So her mother is Hades. Her mother banishes her from hell and basically makes her live out her time in the human world. I also read this because of the trick rep. Like, if you haven't caught on, I'm trying to read books that have my disorder represented because I'm trying to flesh out if it's good character rep or not. This book is so triggering. I would never recommend it for someone with my disorder. So the person who has trick in this is a side character, and the reason that we find out about it is because someone plays a horrible, horrible trick on the main character, which triggers her into an episode, which ends in her hospitalization. And not only that, but the author is really not paying attention to the word choice she should use. Like, she knows that one of her characters has this super damaging mental disorder, and throughout the novel, the author writes the main character thinking in her mind, like, oh, I'm just so frustrated, I want to pull my hair out. And I cringed like every time I read it because It's one thing when an author writes that without knowing it's a disorder. It's another thing when the author clearly does know it's a disorder and then continues to use that language. So like this book was just a like from me for like the disorder rep, like absolutely not, I will never recommend it, no way, Jose. In terms of plot, like for a storyline, I thought that it was interesting, but a little more juvenilely written. It is YA, so I'm cutting it slack. So like overall I gave it 3 stars, not my cup of tea. So the next one I read is Outrun the Wind by Elizabeth Tammi. This was another one for the Femme FanTale Readathon. And this was really interesting. So we're following 2 main girls, women, they're right on the cusp. And basically one of them is named Kahina, and she is one of Artemis's huntresses. And she is sent into the woods to make sure that this hunting party doesn't interfere with this giant boar that Artemis has set to punish like a local king who didn't pay tribute to Artemis. And in the hunting party, there is a woman named Atalanta, who is known as a fierce hunter and also the fastest runner. So she actually goes and is gonna try and kill the boar, but something happens and Artemis gets pissed and things don't turn out as it should be. And it leads both of these women to kind of go off on these separate journeys, which come back together pretty soon after that. And so like in this book, there's a lot going on. And I think the plotting needed to be a little tighter, but then I was also so intrigued by so many of the like historical elements. Overall, I gave it 3 stars, I think, because I thought that the plot was pretty messy and there were some parts which were pretty boring, which is hard to do when you're dealing with like gods and goddesses. So there's like this battle between Artemis and Apollo, there's like Artemis's huntresses, and then there's the Delphi oracles, and there's so much happening, and like this like marriage quest, and like how Atlanta makes her suitors try to beat her at a foot race, but she's like the fastest runner. Like there's all this going on, and sometimes I was fascinated and it would have been a 4, and then sometimes I was just so bored / thought that the plot was falling apart, and I like pushed through because I was like, yes. And it also has queer love between the 2 female characters, so it's very much like I wanted to love it so much, but it just wasn't quite there for me. But if you like Greek mythology, if you like sapphic love, if you want to know more about the myths and legends of that time, then this would be for you to pick up. However, the one that I would recommend more than this is The Dark Wife by Sarah Deemer, which is Hades' Persephone. So, okay, moving on. Okay, so as I said in the beginning, the whole time that I was reading these kind of quicker books, I was also reading 3 nonfiction books as well. So the first one that I finished during the time was Pain and Prejudice by Gabrielle Jackson. So this is just such, this book made me so freaking angry. So a lot of the facts in here are about how the medical profession is biased toward men, and how from the very inception, most of the tests and the medications and the symptoms that doctors know are about men, not about women. So it's very much like in modern day, right now, the bias for men is harming and even killing women because people don't realize that it exists. And it was only in, I think, 2016 that laws were passed that any medication has to also be tested on female rats. Like, what the actual heck? Like, just so much in here was so maddening. So, like, the book starts off and it first off walks you through the female kind of vulva and reproductive system, and then it goes through menopause and periods and then pregnancy. And the very beginning of the book was interesting, but then honestly the anatomical section and the menopause section, they were very boring to me because I already do know the anatomy, because Like, I just do. And the menopause isn't terribly interesting to me because I'm quite a far bit away from there. And then when we got into the history of hysteria and kind of the categorization of women throughout time, I immediately got angry and invested again. So, like, this book swung between sections that I found dry and boring and uninteresting to the sections that I was like, everyone needs to read this right now. It's extremely important. Like, the talk about historical ways that women were thought to be hysterical, whereas in modern day, men are much more likely to be diagnosed with PTSD, whereas women are diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. And borderline personality disorder causes a lot of medical kind of bias towards the person who has it, where the doctor might think you're just looking for attention or you're just whining, whereas PTSD is thought of as much more medically proven, and medicine can help. And also, it's like, because it is so gendered, if you have PTSD, people take you more seriously, whereas if you have BPD, people might brush you off or not give you help. Like, so many stories in here of women who have gone to their doctors and have had like complaints, and the doctors just brush them off. As well as it's also thought of that like women have a higher pain threshold, or like a completely different way of processing pain than men. So when men go in and they're complaining of pain, they are more readily given medicine. Whereas when women go in, doctors just think they're complaining and they are less likely to be given medicine. And it was so goddamn infuriating. And it made me just so angry, honestly. And I'm really honestly lucky that before I go into a doctor, I usually research best medications for what I'm asking for, and I talk through my options. And I'm well educated, and usually my partner goes with me, who is a man, and my doctor is a female, and I'm just like horrified at these stories of women who perhaps don't have the educational background, they don't have the ability to research medication, they don't maybe come across as like not hysterical, for lack of a better word. Like, if you're in so much pain and you don't know what's wrong with you, and you rock up to the doctor and you're like, I need something, I'm in so much pain, just for the doctor to be like, I think you're just imagining it, like, calm down. Okay, well, I didn't want to yell at you, but now I very much want to yell at you. Like, I have only had experiences like that in Japan, where when I asked for birth control, which is like a whole other thing, they asked me, like, what does my husband think of that, and if my husband could come in with me, which is such bullshit. I can't even, like, no. But again, like, in this book, they're talking about how when women are asking for medications that could ease chronic pain conditions, often the doctor will weigh their potential for pregnancy and their potential to be fertile more than their want to get rid of the pain, which it's not their choice to make, it's like the woman's choice to make if they value everyday pain over a possible infertility. So, like, this book, yeah, I ended up giving this 3.5 stars because some sections I think are so crucial, and I wish that the other sections had maybe been chopped down, or I understand why they're included. This is to, like, basically reach as many people as possible. So all the talk about the chronic pain conditions and all the talk about menopause and the anatomy of a female body, I totally do understand. It just wasn't that interesting to me, either because I already knew it or I don't have those conditions, you know, like that. But I think this is incredibly important. And if you're looking for more information about how females are treated in the medical community, then this will probably shock you, because I was getting so angry that my husband refused to read in the same room as me, because I would just stop and read him passages, like, in total disbelief, because I was like, you are not going to believe this shit that's happening right now. So yeah, if you're looking for an infuriating but enlightening read, go for it. So the next one that I finished is It's Not About the Burqa. edited by Mariam Khan, and this is a collection of, I think, 17 essays by Muslim women. So this was so eye-opening. Some of the essays were more interesting than others because obviously like some of the writing styles I like more than others, but just there were so many things discussed in here that I learned, basically. That's just the extent of it. Like, I didn't have experience, I didn't have any friends who were telling me about their experiences, so this was basically like me just getting told a bunch of stuff I didn't know, frankly. So every essay focuses on something completely different, but some of it is on Islamophobia and about how Muslim women are treated in the larger context of society, about how feminism fits into Islam, and about how perceptions of Islam and the patriarchy play out, and how kind of, a lot of times, and I totally hadn't, I think I knew it, but I hadn't ever like crystallized it in my mind, that a lot of times when people are saying like, oh, Islam is really oppressive to women, it's not actually. If you look at the text, it's more that the cultural interpretation, which is again a patriarchy, has skewed it that way. I just learned so many things. There's also women in here who are queer, who want to have sex like before marriage. There's so many different voices in here, and I really appreciated it. And also terms people prefer to use for the community, and also names for things, like the difference between a hijab and a burqa, and different sorts of clothing. Like, just, it was really, really good. So I gave it 4 stars overall because some parts were really dense, so I felt I had to read certain parts twice because, you know, like when you read through a section and you didn't retain anything, that's how some of this was, but for the most part, it was really just eye-opening, and I'm really glad I read it, and I highly recommend it to anyone who's looking for first-hand accounts of Islam, of the Muslim female experience, about Muslim feminism, and also about the religion itself. The Muslim women each experience their religion and live their religion in different ways. So just like, you know, every other religion, like, it's crazy to think like, oh, they're all really strict and they all, you know, whatever kind of stereotypes that you were going to pigeonhole Muslim people, especially women. No, I think that this book is really important, and honestly, like, this should be just, you know, thought pieces for school, you know, just make it happen. There needs to be more copies, more book clubs need to read it, need to be discussion, but I highly recommend this. It was so, so good. Okay, and the last book that I finished reading in the first half of March is I Am Still Alive by Kate Ellis Marshall. So this was given to me by my lovely aunt, and this is a woman versus nature type of book, which was my favorite type of book, and then I kind of burned out on it. But because I was reading all of these really heavy nonfictions, I was kind of getting into this reading slump, so I was like, okay, I think it's finally time I broke out my like favorite thing ever. And this got me right out of my reading slump. I'm so freaking happy. So this is following Jess, who was in a really bad car accident with her mom. Her mom passed away, and she's left with a physical disability where her leg doesn't really work properly, and she has this limp. And she is sent to live with her father in Anchorage. Only when she goes to Anchorage, she's met by this pilot who says, actually, your dad lives quite a few hours flight outside of Anchorage. And when she gets there, there's one cabin, her dad, and a dog, and that's it. There's nothing else. So she is kind of put into this situation where he is teaching her to hunt and stuff over 2 weeks. And then people show up, and suddenly, due to whatever reasons, she is all alone in the wilderness. And then she has to survive, and then maybe get revenge. So this book I just finished this morning, and honestly, it's not like the best written book I've ever read. It's not even like the best woman versus nature book I've ever read. However, it got me out of my reading slump. I was turning the pages so fast. I almost didn't want to go to bed last night because I wanted to finish like the last 60 pages, but then I woke up this morning and I was like, I gotta know. So I finished and it was so good, and I'm feeling so chuffed about reading right now. So I gave this 4 stars. It is just, you know, kind of like a survival thriller, and I thought it was really good. The element of her leg is so interesting because it hinders her so much when she's already at such a disadvantage, that I was fascinated by what was going to happen, because like she has to plan what she's going to do every day because she's so limited in, like, if she goes out hard one day, she has to recuperate like for 2 days. Do you know what I mean? So it just added this next level of like, oh my God, what's going to happen? And also I appreciate that so many things went wrong. So many things. Like, it's not like she magically found a gun, magically found like this perfect shelter, magically found whatever. It's like, no, things got hard and shit got fucked up. And yeah, so I really enjoyed reading this. 4 stars. It was really great. And I'm really glad my reading slump is apparently over. And the one other thing I'm going to mention is that I am obviously still reading Romantic Outlaws. I am this far of the way through, and this is the end-ish. This is all, what's it called? Bibliography. So I have this much left of this book. So I am just chugging along. Every night I read about 25 pages before I go to bed. So if I don't finish it this month, I will continue it into the Owls in April. So I will get this book finished. Okay, so that finishes up my March wrap-up part 1. I hope that you guys found something interesting. I have had just the kind of up and down. The world is up and down. I don't even know what's happening, but yeah, reading is a good time, and I got myself out of the slump. Thank you guys so much for watching this. I hope that you are staying safe and that you have lots of things to keep you company if you are self-isolating. And honestly, I am self-isolating, but I work from home anyway, so it's the kind of the same old, same old. The only time we go out is to go grocery shopping, and that's it. Yeah. Okay. But I will chat to you all later in another video soon. Stay safe, and I will talk to you all later. Bye!